I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day, are women evil? Now, the reason I'm asking that very strange sounding question is because the Huffington Post has recently published an article entitled Women Are Evil. I kid you not, that is actually the title of this article. Women Are Evil. It's an opinion piece by Liz Lentz. Let me just read to you from the article and you'll get the tone and the gist of what's being said. I'll post a link in the description below so you can read it for yourself as well. The monsters are always men. No, I kid you not, that is the opening sentence of this article. As soon as I read that, I thought to myself, well, I dare you to go and speak to a victim of female abuse and say to them, the monsters are always men, and see what sort of reaction you get back. And that opening sentence basically sets the tone for how rational the rest of the article is going to be. It goes on from there to say this. The monsters are always men. They menace from the highest positions of power. They lurk in the shadows of our subconscious. But there is a reckoning that hasn't yet happened, and that's with women who use their bodies and social positions as wives and mothers to mediate how we handle the monsters of our society. And she goes on, these intermediaries are all too often women, white women of privilege, who are doing quite well under the patriarchy. It's a neat trick, enforcing a system that affords you an amount of privilege but also oppresses others just like you, and it's one white women have been playing for years. So basically, as you can tell from that opening salvo, this whole article is suggesting that women are evil. Basically, every woman who is not with them, these sort of more militant third and fourth wave feminists, if you're not with them, you are evil. You're not just someone who disagrees with them. You're not just someone who's not with them. You've now crossed over into the evil territory. Before, they were talking about such women as being oppressed victims of the system, and they would usually belittle them and talk in very condescending ways. You know, they don't understand the truth, and if their eyes were opened, they'd throw off the shackles of this male oppression and they would join us. That sort of used to be the rhetoric that was being used. But now here we are, just out and out, women are evil. That's right, so no longer even any pretend sympathy. You're just evil. Now, let's leave aside the obvious racism in those opening paragraphs, and that's sort of we find throughout the rest of the article. But this article actually totally contradicts its main premise subsequently when it goes on to say this. And this catch-22 doesn't just happen at the highest positions of power. A 2015 study published in the Journal of Criminal Justice found that women who are young, white, or mothers receive a more lenient sentence and lower bond than their male counterparts. Now, I don't know if she's realised or not, but that statement there, that factual statement about how women are treated in the criminal justice system, tells you that her central premise is absolutely flawed. So first of all, she's tried to make it about masculinity versus femininity, and there's this whole masculine system of oppression where men benefit and women are constantly oppressed by the system, and it's men who are always the monsters doing the oppressing. And then she quotes a study which actually shows that when it comes to the criminal justice system, women do better than men do. They get more lenient sentences and they have to pay a lower bond in order to get out of jail. So clearly the facts don't measure up. Not only that, but she's tried to make it about race. And again, her own statement of fact here about this study shows that young women and women who are mothers, along with, she had to include white as a separate category, but women who are young and who are mothers, they get lenient sentences compared to men. So again, this is not a racial thing either. Now, this sort of brings me to my main point. I'm not at all surprised by this article or the tone that it's chosen to take and how it's now turned on women. Now, the reason I'm not surprised by this is because for a while now, third and fourth wave militant feminism has had a real problem dealing with the evidence that counters the claims that it likes to make about male privilege. So for a long time now, there's been this consistent claim, it's been sort of one of the hallmarks of this movement, that men, by virtue of their biology, they are born into a privileged class, that women always do worse off, and that men are advantaged. Now, when you would point out social trends, areas that happen regularly and ongoingly in society where men actually are disadvantaged when compared to women, Instead of saying, oh, okay, maybe we're looking at this issue of society in a far too simplistic and binary narrative, males versus females. There's not actually what we think it is, and instead there's a whole lot of more complex interplay going on here between various issues. Instead of admitting that maybe they were looking at things far too simplistically, what they will generally turn around and say is, oh, those men are also the victims of patriarchy. And so I'm not surprised to now have them turning around and saying, well, these women here are actually also part of this patriarchy. Because if your sort of core premise can be shown to be problematic and have big factual inconsistencies in it, and you ignore the factual inconsistencies, then it's not much of a leap of logic to start reasoning in other ways that are really factually flawed as well. And to start including women as now the targets of your ire. And I think the reason this has happened is twofold. And this is, again, why I'm not surprised. Number one, despite the claims that women are automatically disadvantaged, more and more and more, we can look around our society and we can see women thriving. And women who are doing really well and who are achieving at the highest levels and who are in positions of power. And this is just a common occurrence now. So it's pretty hard to sort of keep up this facade that there is this system of oppression that is deliberately keeping women down, when you can point to lots and a growing number of examples where that isn't actually the case, which indicates that things have changed a lot. Secondly, the surveys consistently tell us that the vast majority of women do not identify as feminists. And I'm kind of not surprised by this. I think what it is that a lot of women look at what militant and sort of modern feminism has become, and they say, I don't recognize myself in that. I look at that, it doesn't really reflect who I am or necessarily who I want to be, so I don't want to identify as that. And so they don't buy in. And so it was only a matter of time before they had to start labeling these women as part of the problem as well. And I think this is, I guess, the only option they see they have open to them, certainly authors like this one, is that we have to target these women and claim that they are victimizing us as well. Again, this is not surprising. If you start in a sort of mentality of I am in a victim class by virtue of my femininity, I am a biological victim, then it's not going to take you long to start seeing victimhood everywhere you look, including in other people who are supposedly victims with you, and then looking at those people and saying, in actual fact, no, they're my oppressors too. Why? Because they won't join me in this quest. You see, I read this article and ultimately I think about my wife. She's a wife and a mother. I think about my sister. I think about my mother. I think about my female friends. And I don't recognize any of them in this article. I don't recognize them in this article. I don't see oppressors and I don't see oppressed women. I don't see victims. I see empowered women who are doing amazing things in our society. I don't see women who are oppressing other people. I see a lot of women in my circle of friends who are truly heroic in the way they are self-giving of themselves to their children and their marriage and family life. The way in which they are pouring themselves out for the world around them. I don't recognise this article as being true at all. And I think that's why most women don't want to bar of modern feminism, what it's become, because they look at it and they say, that's not my life. This is not a real picture of how the real world actually is. As I said, I'll post a link in the description below so you can read the article for yourself. The floor is now open. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon. There's a link in the description below and a link on screen at the end of this video. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.